Alright guys, I'm going to take a quick look at my build and I'm going to critique it a little bit. I start off, I've got a screenshot of everything that I use, my at-wills and counters. And then I've got a shot of my gear here so you can take a look. And speaking of stats, 68k armor pen, 68k accuracy, 68k crit, 68k defense. Those are definitely top priority. And once you get that 68k defense, you're tanky. You're good to go. Can't really mitigate any more damage than that. I do believe in 450 to 550k HP. I don't think you should need more than that. I know it's possible to make builds that have like up to 800k HP, maybe even more than that. Heck, I don't know. I think 120k power is all you really need. I don't have 108 to 118k combat advantage. I have around 100k. I wish I could get more, but I can't figure that out right now. Hopefully you guys can. And I say this is low priority here. This awareness, deflect, and crit avoidance. And I think that should sit around 50k. I mean, yeah, it's okay to get more than that. But do your best to keep it balanced because of one of the feats that we take later on. Here's just a screenshot of my ability scores. I went strength and dexterity. Strength for damage bonus. Dexterity for, I think, movement speed and crit severity. Bulette Pup as my summoned augment companion, and why I've chosen it. It seems like everybody's going for the Bulette Pup's power, combat advantage, and defense, and all three of those are unique to the Bulette Pup. That combination specifically unique to the Bulette Pup, and most people are finding that to be the most valuable combination of stats. Power is uncapped, so you want as much of it as you possibly can. Combat advantage is pretty hard to come by. I know I'm struggling to get it up to where it needs to be. And defense, while I'm not really short on defense, I know a lot of DPS classes are. The damage percentage boost gear from previous mods, the Cuna of the Bear, Terrid Grips, the Shadow Stalker Ring, the Baphomet set. Let me talk about the main of the Manticore. The main of the Manticore is a really nice piece of armor. I think if there is one takeaway, it would be to use that. You use your daily, and then the next thing that hits you takes half your HP and damage, so that's pretty useful. Vorpal is going to be my go-to for the sole reason that I want to put out as much damage as possible. I know some other people are using lightning. That's okay too if you want to run that. I just think Vorpal is pretty much the clear choice for straightforward DPS until it gets nerfed or other enchantments get brought up to be more balanced with it. I recommend Elven Battle Enchantment also, rank 12 plus. It reduces the time that you're controlled, so you're going to get back into the battle a little bit quicker. There are probably a couple other good choices too. If you prefer another one, that's fine. I don't think that this is exactly a make or break thing for anyone's build. Alright, now I'm looking at my insignias here. I've got one Oppressor's Reprieve so that when you're stunned, knocked, immobilized, or controlled, basically, you receive a heal over time. That's nice just for survival. I'm using 2 Gladiator's Guile insignia bonuses. Movement speed is nice. I like getting there first. Artificer's Persuasion, when you use an artifact, reduce your cooldowns. Now, that is a 2-second cooldown. For me, Artificer's Persuasion makes sense. That 2-second difference is good for me personally. You could probably swap it out with something else, but again, there aren't too many options as far as insignia bonuses this time around, this mod. It's mostly just stuff to heal yourself, or yeah, I can't really think of what else there is out there at the moment. Okay, for my boons, for the most part, I have chosen either hit points, power, or the boons that give me a percentage of damage, like to undead, dinosaurs, that kind of thing. A couple different boons to note are the movement speed boon is pretty nice. And then there's also a boon for companion influence. I believe if you put 5 points in the companion influence boon, then you get an additional 10% companion influence. I don't think companion influence makes as big of a difference as I wish it would. But it is a difference. But Focused Retaliation is the boon that I've chosen to take, and because of the rank 3 that mirrors all incoming damage back to the attacker for 15 seconds. Okay, I talked about mount powers a little bit. I really like the Swarm. This is the one I use. I use the Swarm not just because of the because of the 5% increased damage for 10 seconds, but also because I can use it if I am controlled or stunned, something like that. If I get stunned, I can just use my Swarm, automatically pop out of it, get back into the action again. Artifacts I have written here. The Wyvern Venom Coated Blades are pretty nice, especially if you have the Opportunism mount power, which reduces your cooldowns by 30% every time you use an artifact. So what you can do there is basically go through your rotation, use your artifact on nothing, set your cooldowns again, and then 15 seconds later you can repeat the process. Soul Sight Crystal is probably still good, especially for, single target boss fights. DC Sigil is worth noting because of the AP gain. But at the moment I'm using the Envenomed Storyteller Journal. In uncapped content and Lair of the Mad Mage, it gives about 25% AP gain also. It gives a 5% buff to damage, and then it also does quite a bit of damage itself. So for me, that is going to be probably best in slot. I don't know when it's coming back around again, but you can win that. Anyhow, those are my choices for artifacts. Mount, equip power, opportunism. Every time you use your artifact, you reduce your cooldowns by 30%. Armored Griffin isn't necessarily best in slot. I believe Snail could also perform really well there too. 10k power is also another high contender. If you can get a mount power at all, that is, because these are pretty expensive, so I'm not going to say this is something that's completely necessary for a build. It's more of a convenience thing. I wouldn't pressure myself to get that before I ranked up my bondings all the way, for example. Like, work on your bondings, work on the runestones in your companion, that kind of thing. Legendary mounts come last, generally. Alright, my 2 at-wills are Cleave and Tide of Iron. My 3 encounters of choice are Bull Charge, Shield Throw, and Anvil of Doom. That being said, I don't use these 3 things in every situation. They work in most situations for me, but that's usually provided I can get there first and secure aggro. I like to run in, throw my shield at the group, and then drop down with Dig In real quick and retaliate at the group as they come into me. And if I'm able to do that, usually that's very helpful in securing aggro from everything in the group. But if I've got teammates that are super speedy, or maybe they're running in first, which is going to make my life a little more difficult. If they're the first ones to get aggro, then that makes it just a little bit more difficult for me to pull it back onto myself. So yeah, well, I mean, that's also why I use Bull Charge. That kind of ensures that I get there first. But, I might, in this situation, I might use Shield Throw, Bull Charge, and I'd lose Anvil for something like Shield Slam, which is an AoE attack that knocks everything down. That's really useful. Or Line Breaker is really nice too, and I think Line Breaker has an additional increased threat as its added effect also. So Shield Throw has increased threat, Line Breaker increased threat, Tide of Iron increased threat, Retaliate increased threat. I don't know for sure if the increased threat bonuses of all those 4 different things stack exponentially, but there's a possibility that they do. Alright, 2 dailies here, Earthshaker and Bladed Rampart. I don't really use Earthshaker too much. I've just been using Bladed Rampart for pretty much everything now. If I'm going to do a big pull, I'll pull everything onto me, and right when they come in to attack me, I'll pop Bladed Rampart. Maybe they hit me 3-4 times before the effect wears off. After they hit you that 3rd time, it's already got more damage output than Earthshaker anyhow. Class features Greater Endurance. This increases your movement speed by 10%. whenever your stamina gauge is full. That's the kicker there. But that being said, my stamina's full pretty much all the time. I try not to use my shield too much unless I'm maneuvering, but when I'm maneuvering, I might not necessarily be taking damage. I'll just throw up my shield so that I can sidestep more efficiently, I guess. So I'm not losing stamina there. The main times I lose stamina are going to be when I use Dig In to proc Retaliate. Combat Superiority is my other one. Whenever you activate an encounter or daily power, you increase the damage dealt by your at-will attacks by 10%. Alright, let me talk about my feats now. Alright, Shield Throw now generates additional threat. Its cooldown is reduced to 6 seconds. Magnitude is reduced to 250. But that is okay. 250 magnitude for something that has a 6-second cooldown. Most of our abilities have like 12-second cooldown, 18-second cooldown. So 6-second cooldown, 250 magnitude is huge. Also, it's very convenient for just grabbing the attention of enemies at the beginning of the fight. We don't have our mark anymore. Our old tab mechanic mark is gone, so this is pretty much our only long distance aggro grabber that we have. So I usually open the fight with Shield Thrower, let them kind of all funnel into me, drop down with Dig In, and then Retaliate. And that will be how I start the fight usually. Or I'll throw Shield and follow up with Bold Charge immediately. There seems to be like no lag between those two encounters. At all, like no cast time. So it's a really nice opener also. Second I've taken is Rising Tide. Tide of Iron now grants the effect of Rising Tide, causing you to do additional physical damage whenever an attack strikes multiple enemies. So yeah, Tide of Iron is the at will. Feels like it lasts a little bit longer than 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds. I know I can get 5 good swings of cleave in before it actually wears off. Something to note is that Rising Tide can actually crit. When you crit with cleave, Rising Tide crits also. This is one of the reasons that Vanguard is so competitive with damage right now. Alright, third, combat balance. Whenever you're not blocking, which I try not to block very much at all, because if I'm blocking, I'm not doing damage. I want to be doing damage. It decreases your damage taken by up to 10%, but as long as your deflect rating, critical avoidance, and awareness are equal, and so that will diminish the further apart those ratings get. But that's why earlier I was like, try to keep them around 50,000 if you can. It's okay to go more on those 3 stats, but if you do, just try to keep them as close together as possible, if that's possible. The only time I'm really blocking is when I'm using Dig In to proc Retaliate. Alright. Sharpened Senses. Bladed Rampart now negates the effect of combat advantage against you. So, Bladed Rampart is my daily of choice anyhow. It decreases the damage that I'm taking by 30%. And now because I've taken Sharpened Senses, it means the enemies can't hit me with combat advantage. So even if they're behind me, they're not getting that combat advantage damage bonus. The last one I've chosen is Shake It Off, which increases the magnitude of Retaliate by 300 based on your remaining stamina. But yeah, I try to use Retaliate as often as I can. And you don't have to hold it down for very long. It is possible to time it just right. So yeah, it takes some practice to get the timing of Retaliate down. But when you actually do get it down, it's pretty rewarding. Yeah, I guess my main critiques of the build would be, you don't want to just assume that you're always going to use these 3 encounters. But there's going to be times when Bolt Charge or Anvil of Doom, when you could lose those for Line Breaker or Shield Slam or some other AoE encounters. Like, you're not tied to those specifically. There's room for adaptation. You don't have to just use those 3 all the time. Likewise, Cleave isn't always going to be the best choice, because yeah, Tide of Iron procs that additional magnitude 40 hit, but only when Cleave will hit multiple enemies, for example. So if you're in a fight where there's only one enemy, it doesn't really make sense to slot cleat. You could use Tide of Iron and then Brazen Slash, which has high magnitude damage and fast rate of attack instead. So there's definitely going to be times where it calls for a little bit of adaptation. Also, another thing down like in class features, I use greater endurance and combat superiority, but there are situations where I will lose greater endurance for what's it called? Anvil of Challenge, the one that makes Anvil of Doom puts you at the top of the threat list automatically. At the moment, everything is melee except for Shield Throw, I think. They fixed Commander Strike so that it is counting as melee. Also, our dailies do not count as melee. So, there is that. I'll link this guide again in the description, but, hopefully talking about it a little bit helped out. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And, yep. See you next time.